On February 19, 1945, Corporal Tony Stein, a 23-year-old Marine from Dayton, Ohio, became a symbol of battlefield ingenuity, courage, and sacrifice during the invasion of Iwo Jima. A former tool and die maker and the son of Austrian Jewish immigrants, Stein brought more than physical endurance and bravery to the battlefield. He brought mechanical genius, innovation born from necessity. Months before the invasion, while stationed at Camp Tarawa, Stein and his fellow Marine Sergeant Mel Grevich saw a problem. Standard M1919. Browning machine guns were effective but too heavy and slow for offensive operations. Recognizing the need for a more mobile weapon, they salvaged an ANM-2 aircraft machine gun from a crashed SBD Dauntless. Lighter and capable of firing at 3 times the rate of a standard Browning, the ANM-2 had potential. Stein modified it, adding a Garand stock, a bipod, sights, and a custom trigger. The result was the Stinger, a 25-pound high-rate-of-fire weapon fed by 100-round belts, an unapproved but field-ready machine gun. Stein built 6 Stingers. Though initially mocked by some, the weapons were soon approved for combat use. Stein carried one ashore at Iwo Jima, the assault on Iwo Jima. Landing on the black volcanic sands at 0900, Stein and his unit faced overwhelming Japanese defenses. Tunnels, bunkers, and machine gun nests riddled the 8-square-mile island. Company A, 28th Marines, was pinned down by enemy fire. Stein, recognizing the dire situation, stood upright amid the barrage to identify hidden enemy positions. Using the Stinger, he destroyed multiple pillboxes, suppressing enemy fire and enabling his unit to advance. The Stinger proved devastating but rapidly consumed ammunition. Stein began running repeated trips across 200 yards of exposed terrain to bring back more ammo. On each trip, he carried wounded Marines to safety. Over the course of several hours, he made 8 runs, rescuing 9 wounded comrades while keeping his unit supplied, running barefoot under fire. By mid-morning, Stein's boots had disintegrated from heat and ash. He removed them as well as his helmet to move faster. Barefoot, bleeding, and under fire, he continued his supply runs. Japanese snipers targeted him, but he managed to suppress a sniper with the Stinger after a near miss. His improvisational decisions, like running in zigzags and shedding weight, kept him alive and effective. As the day wore on, Stein's weapons suffered. The barrel bent, the stock burned, and the trigger mechanism began to fail. Yet he continued to fight, personally accounting for the destruction of over a dozen enemy positions. At one point, the Stinger was shot out of his hands. Stein retrieved and repaired it under fire and resumed the assault. By the end of the day, Company A had advanced 400 yards inland. Stein had fired more than 2,000 rounds, carried 9 wounded men, and helped destroy 23 enemy strongholds. His feet were torn, his uniform soaked in blood and sweat, and his weapon nearly unusable. Still, he pressed on, the climb to Mount Suribachi. The next day, Company A prepared to assault Mount Suribachi. The armorer managed to make the Stinger operational again, and Stein used it to suppress enemy positions during the climb. But on February 20th, a grenade wounded him in multiple areas. Still refusing evacuation, he continued to fight until blood loss forced him to leave the line. He was evacuated to a hospital ship offshore, returned to the battlefield. Just 6 days later, upon learning that his unit was suffering severe losses at Hill 362A, Stein left the hospital ship without authorization. He returned to the beach, gathered equipment, and rejoined Company A, no longer with the Stinger but with an M1 Garand. He fought alongside his depleted platoon in the brutal fighting around the hill. On March 1st, during a reconnaissance patrol, he was serving as assistant patrol leader. While scouting enemy positions, he was shot and killed by a sniper. The patrol completed its mission, but Stein's body was brought back by his comrades, legacy and honor. Tony Stein's death reverberated through the 28th Marines. His legendary actions on February 19th, barefoot runs, the evacuation of wounded comrades, and battlefield innovation, were documented and later submitted in a Medal of Honor recommendation. 1 year to the day after his actions, on February 19th, 1946, his widow Joan received the medal from the governor of Ohio. The Medal of Honor citation described his extraordinary heroism, the lone charges, the exposed assaults, the evacuations under fire, and the sheer will that enabled one man to keep his platoon moving. The citation did not mention the name Stinger, but the weapon became legend in the Marine Corps. None of the 6 original weapons survived the war, but their impact was lasting. Stein's remains were brought home in 1948 and reburied with full honors in Dayton, Ohio. In 1972, the USS Stein was named in his honor. The Marine Corps immortalized his story in training materials, emphasizing adaptation, innovation, and courage. Tony Stein was more than a Marine. He was an engineer, a rescuer, a warrior. He proved that courage isn't always loud. It's sometimes barefoot, improvised, and determined.